The metallic taste of desperation coated Clara Brennan's tongue as she lay curled in the back of the abandoned wagon, her stomach twisting with hunger pangs that had become constant companions over the past 3 days. Her throat burned with thirst, lips cracked and bleeding from the relentless Colorado sun that beat down on the canvas covering above her. She had thought Marcus would come back. She had believed him when he said he was just riding ahead to the next town, that he would return with supplies, and they would continue their journey west together. But that had been 72 hours ago, and Clara knew with a sinking certainty that rattled her bones that Marcus Whitley had abandoned her here on this desolate stretch of prairie outside Colorado City, taking with him every cent she had saved working at the mill back in Philadelphia, every hope she had harbored for a new life. The year was 1876, and Clara had turned 21 just weeks before boarding that train westward, believing Marcus's promises of marriage and prosperity in the gold fields. Instead, she found herself dying slowly in a weathered wagon that creaked with every gust of wind, her body too weak now to even call for help. She had stopped crying yesterday. There were no tears left. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart stutter with something between hope and fear. Clara tried to lift her head but managed only a small movement before collapsing back onto the rough wooden boards. The steps came closer, boots crunching on the dry earth, and then the canvas covering was pulled back, flooding her world with blinding sunlight. Jesus Christ! The voice was deep, rough with shock. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" Clara forced her eyes open, squinting against the brightness. A man's face came into focus, angular and weathered, with dark stubble covering a strong jaw. His eyes were an unusual shade of green, bright with concern beneath the shadow of his worn Stetson. "Water," she managed to whisper, the word barely audible. He moved fast, reaching for a canteen at his hip and carefully lifting her head. "Easy now, not too much at once. You will make yourself sick." The water touched her lips and Clara nearly wept with relief. She drank in small sips as he instructed, feeling the cool liquid soothe her ravaged throat. When he finally pulled the canteen away, she wanted to protest, but he was already reaching into his saddlebag. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, pulling out a cloth-wrapped package. "Where is whoever left you?" "3 days," Clara whispered. "He is not coming back." The man's jaw tightened and something dark flashed in his eyes. "What kind of bastard leaves a woman alone like this?" He unwrapped the cloth, revealing thick slices of brown bread and dried meat. "Here. You need to eat, but go slow. Your stomach will not handle much after going without." Clara took the bread with trembling hands, her vision blurring with tears she thought she had run out of. The simple kindness of this stranger offering food felt like a miracle. She took a small bite, and the taste exploded on her tongue, better than any feast she had ever known. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much." He watched her carefully, his expression a mix of anger and compassion. "Name is Ethan Jennings. I work a ranch about 10 miles south of Colorado City. Was heading into town for supplies when I spotted this wagon. Been sitting here for days by the looks of it." "Clara Brennan," she replied between small bites. "From Philadelphia." Ethan settled back on his heels, studying her with those piercing green eyes. "Long way from home, Miss Brennan. What brought you to Colorado?" Shame heated her cheeks even as weakness kept her prone in the wagon bed. "Foolishness. A man named Marcus Whitley convinced me to come west with him. Said we would marry once we reached California. Instead, he took my money and left me here to die." The muscle in Ethan's jaw jumped. "You got family back east?" "No one." Clara forced herself to take another small bite of bread, though her stomach was already protesting. "My parents died of fever 2 years ago. I have a brother, but he went to sea and I have not heard from him in over a year." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, watching her eat. Then he stood, brushing dust from his worn denim trousers. "Can you sit up?" "I think so." With his help, Clara managed to pull herself into a sitting position, though her head swam and black spots danced in her vision. Ethan kept a steadying hand on her shoulder until the world stopped spinning. "You cannot stay here," he said simply. "The next wagon train through might not come for weeks, and you will not survive another night in this heat without water and proper food. I have nowhere to go." The admission scraped Clara's pride raw. No money, no prospects. Marcus took everything. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he said the words that would change everything. "Stay with me." Clara blinked, certain she had misheard. "What?" "Come back to the ranch," he elaborated, his tone practical but not unkind. "We have a bunkhouse where the hands stay during drives, but right now it is just me and my foreman. There is a small cabin near the main house that belonged to the previous owner's mother before she passed. It needs work, but it is sound. You can stay there, rest up, get your strength back. Once you are well, if you want to move on, I will stake you enough for passage east or wherever you want to go." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Clara asked, suspicion warring with desperate hope. Ethan's expression softened. "Because someone should have done it for my sister. She died alone in a mining camp in California 5 years ago. Her husband had taken sick, and when he passed, she had nothing. No one helped her. By the time I got word and made it out there, she had been dead for 2 months. His voice roughened. "I cannot bring Mary back, but I can make sure another woman does not suffer the same fate, not if I can prevent it." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "I do not know what to say." "Say yes," Ethan replied. "Let me help you. No strings, no expectations beyond honest work once you are strong enough, if you choose to stay on. I need help with the books and managing the house. My foreman, Sam, does his best, but neither of us has much talent for organizing supplies or keeping accounts straight." Clara looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deception or ulterior motive. She found only sincerity and a deep well of old grief that matched her own. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, thank you." Ethan nodded once, satisfied. "All right then. Let me get you on my horse. We will come back for the wagon later. See if there is anything worth salvaging." He lifted her as though she weighed nothing, and Clara was struck by the solid strength of him, the gentleness in his calloused hands despite the obvious power in his frame. He settled her on his horse, a sturdy bay gelding with kind eyes, then swung up behind her. "Lean back against me," he instructed. "It is about an hour's ride, and you are too weak to hold yourself upright the whole way." Clara hesitated, then let herself rest against his chest. He was warm and solid, and smelled of leather and sage and honest sweat. As Ethan urged the horse forward, Clara closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel safe for the first time in months. The ride passed in a haze of pain and exhaustion. Ethan kept up a steady stream of quiet talk, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the ranch, his voice a rumbling vibration against her back that kept her anchored to consciousness. He told her about the 300 head of cattle he ran, the 2 good horses he was breaking for saddle work, the creek that ran through the property and had never gone dry even in the worst droughts. "There is the house," he said finally, and Clara forced her eyes open. The ranch was modest but well kept, with a sturdy log house that had a wide porch and real glass windows. A barn stood to the left, freshly painted, and several corrals held horses that lifted their heads curiously as Ethan rode in. To the right of the main house sat a smaller cabin, weathered but solid-looking, with a stone chimney rising from one end. A man emerged from the barn, tall and lean with silver threading through his dark hair. He stopped short when he saw Clara in Ethan's arms. What happened? Found her in an abandoned wagon on the North Road, Sam. No food or water for 3 days. Some bastard left her to die. Ethan dismounted carefully, then reached up to lift Clara down. She's going to stay in the old cabin until she recovers. Can you start a fire in there while I get her settled? Sam's weathered face hardened with anger at the story, but his voice was gentle when he addressed Clara. Yes, madam. I will get it warm and aired out. Welcome to the Broken Jay. Ethan carried Clara toward the cabin, kicking the door open with his boot. Inside was dim and dusty, furnished with simple pieces. A bed frame with a rolled mattress, a small table and 2 chairs, a trunk in one corner, and a rocking chair near the stone fireplace. Cobwebs draped the corners, and everything had the musty smell of disuse. I know it is not much, Ethan said, setting her carefully in the rocking chair, but I promise we will clean it up and make it comfortable. It is perfect, Clara said honestly. Compared to dying in a wagon, this cabin looked like a palace. Sam arrived with kindling and soon had a fire crackling in the hearth. Ethan disappeared and returned with the mattress from the main house, spreading it on the bed frame and covering it with clean blankets and quilts. Between the 2 men, they swept out the worst of the dust and cobwebs, opened the windows to air out the staleness, and brought in water, more food, and basic supplies. There are dresses in that trunk, Ethan said, gesturing to the wooden chest. They belong to Mrs. Patterson, the woman who lived here before. She was about your height. They might fit well enough until we can get you into town for your own things. I cannot pay you back, Clara said, the words bitter on her tongue. Did not ask you to, Ethan replied evenly. Now you need rest. Real rest in a real bed. Tomorrow, once you have eaten and slept, we can talk about the future. For tonight, just recover. He moved toward the door, Sam already waiting outside, but Clara called after him. Ethan, he turned back. Yes. Why are you really doing this? Ethan was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful in the firelight. Because I know what it is to be alone in this world, he said finally. And I know what a difference one person extending kindness can make. Get some rest, Clara. After they left, Clara sat in the rocking chair for a long time, staring into the fire. Her body ached with exhaustion. Her stomach felt strange and unsettled from food after days of emptiness, but her heart felt something she had not experienced in a very long time. Hope. She forced herself to stand, moving slowly to the trunk. Inside, she found several simple cotton dresses, a nightgown, undergarments, and a wool shawl. Everything smelled of cedar and lavender from the sachets tucked in the corners. Clara changed into the nightgown, marveling at the simple luxury of clean cloth against her skin, then climbed into the bed. The mattress was soft, the quilts warm, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Clara felt safe. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, deep and dreamless. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows and someone was knocking on the door. Clara struggled to sit up, every muscle protesting after days of deprivation. Come in, she called, her voice still hoarse. Ethan entered carrying a tray. Morning, figured you would be hungry. He set the tray on the small table and Clara saw scrambled eggs, more bread, sliced ham, and a cup of what smelled like coffee. Her stomach growled audibly. How are you feeling? Ethan asked, settling into the other chair. Better, Clara admitted. Sore and weak, but better. Eat, he instructed. Then, if you feel up to it, I would like to show you around. No pressure. If you need more rest, that is fine too. Clara made her way to the table and began eating slowly, savoring every bite. Ethan watched her with a careful expression, and she noticed details about him in the morning light that she had missed before. He was probably close to 30, with fine lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested He spent most of his time squinting into the sun. His hands were scarred and calloused from hard work, but his movements were precise and careful. There was something inherently trustworthy about him, something steady and solid that called to the frightened, desperate part of Clara that had spent 3 days convinced she would die alone. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked between bites. "Bought it 4 years ago," Ethan replied. "Saved every cent working trail drives and ranch hand jobs since I was 16. When the previous owner decided to move back east to live with his daughter, I made him an offer. It has been hard work building it up, but it is mine. No one can take it away. That must be a good feeling." "It is." He leaned back, studying her. "What about you? What did you do in Philadelphia?" "I worked in a textile mill after my parents died." The hours were long and the pay was poor, but it was honest work. I had a small room I shared with 2 other girls. Clara set down her fork, her appetite fading as she thought about the choices that had led her here. When Marcus came to town on business, he seemed so sophisticated and kind. He told me about the opportunities out west, how a woman with intelligence and courage could make something of herself. He said he had a claim in California, that he just needed to get back there and file the papers, and then we would be set for life. "Let me guess," Ethan said, his voice hard. "He needed money for the journey, for supplies and filing fees." Clara nodded miserably. "I gave him everything I had saved, 3 years of scrimping and saving, nearly $200. We got as far as Colorado before he said he needed to ride ahead and scout the route. I believed him. I waited in that wagon like a fool, believing he would come back." "You are not a fool," Ethan said firmly. "He was a liar and a thief, and what he did was criminal. If I ever cross paths with Marcus Whitley, I will make sure he regrets it." The fierce protectiveness in his tone made something flutter in Clara's chest. She looked down at her plate, suddenly self-conscious. "Thank you for the food, and for everything else. I still cannot quite believe a stranger would do all this." "We all need help sometimes," Ethan said, standing. "Finish eating and get dressed. I will be outside when you are ready." After he left, Clara forced herself to eat a bit more, then washed her face and hands in the basin someone had filled with fresh water. She selected a simple blue cotton dress from the trunk, relieved to find that it fit reasonably well if a bit loose. Her own dress, filthy from days in the wagon, was beyond salvaging. Outside, the Colorado morning was beautiful. The sky stretched endlessly blue and mountains rose in the purple distance. Ethan was waiting by the corral and Sam stood beside him. Both men touched their hat brims when she approached. "Miss Brennan," Sam greeted. "Good to see you up and about. You gave us quite a scare yesterday." "Thank you for your help," Clara replied. "Both of you. I owe you my life." Sam's weathered face creased with a smile. "Glad to help, madam. Ethan here has a habit of collecting strays. Last year it was a 3-legged dog. Year before that, a kid running from an abusive stepfather. He set the boy up with a job at the Harper Ranch down valley." Ethan looked embarrassed. "Sam." "Just saying," Sam replied with a grin. "You got a good heart, boss. No shame in that." Ethan cleared his throat and changed the subject. "Let me show you around. The barn there is where we keep the horses we are working with and store feed for winter. The main herd is out on the range this time of year, but we bring them in closer when the weather turns." He walked her around the property, pointing out the chicken coop, the root cellar, the smokehouse, and the various outbuildings. Clara found herself studying him as he talked, noticing the way his entire face changed when he smiled, how patient he was in explaining even the smallest details. "The creek is just through those trees," Ethan continued. "Good water year-round. There is a spot where it pools that is perfect for bathing. I can string up a screen for privacy." I do not want to be more trouble than I have already been, Clara protested. It is no trouble. Ethan's green eyes met hers directly. Clara, I meant what I said yesterday. You are welcome here for as long as you need. If you want to stay permanently and work, we can discuss wages and arrangements. If you want to move on once you are stronger, I will help you do that. But while you are here, you are not an imposition. You are a guest. Understood? Clara felt her throat tighten with emotion. Understood. They walked back toward the house, and Clara found herself studying the main building with interest. It was larger than the cabin, built of solid logs with a stone foundation. The porch ran the length of the front, with 2 rocking chairs positioned to catch the evening breeze. Would you like to see inside? Ethan asked. If you do not mind. The interior was surprisingly well kept for a bachelor's home. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. A sturdy table and chairs occupied the space near the kitchen area, and a pair of worn but comfortable-looking armchairs flanked the hearth. Bookshelves lined one wall, crammed with volumes in various states of wear. You read? Clara asked, surprised. When I have time. Ethan moved to the kitchen area, pulling down a jar of what looked like preserved peaches. My mother taught me. She believed education was the most important thing a person could have, even more than land or money. She made sure Mary and I could both read and write and figure properly before she died. How old were you? 14. Mary was 12. Our father had been gone for 2 years already, killed in a mining accident. We went to live with an uncle who worked us hard and fed us little. The day I turned 16, I took Mary and left. We survived by working whatever jobs we could find until I was old enough and experienced enough to earn real money on the cattle drives. Clara felt a pang of sympathy. That must have been terribly hard. It was. Ethan set the jar on the table. But it taught me that family is who you choose, not just blood. Sam is not related to me, but he is the closest thing to a father I have ever known. He took a chance on me when I was 17 and green as grass, taught me everything about ranching and horses and being a man. He seems like a good person. The best. Ethan gestured to the shelves near the fireplace. Those account books there are a mess. I try to keep track of expenses and sales, but my handwriting is terrible and I am not always consistent about recording things. If you are willing, that would be the most helpful thing you could do around here. Organize the books, keep track of supplies and costs, help me figure out where we are wasting money and where we could invest more. Clara moved to the shelves and pulled down one of the ledgers. Ethan had not been exaggerating. His handwriting was nearly illegible. Entries were scattered across pages with no clear order, and several pages had what looked like coffee stains obscuring the numbers. I can definitely help with this, she said, feeling the first real spark of purpose since arriving. It will take time to sort through and reorganize, but it is manageable. No rush, Ethan replied. Take the time you need to recover first. This can wait. But Clara found herself reluctant to wait. After days of helplessness, the prospect of useful work called to her. Would it be all right if I started today? Just a little while I have energy? Ethan studied her, then nodded. If that is what you want. But promise me you will stop if you start feeling poorly. The last thing you need is a relapse. I promise. He helped her carry several ledgers to her cabin, along with fresh paper, pens, and ink. Clara settled at the small table and opened the first book, losing herself in the soothing rhythm of making sense of chaos. Numbers had always come easily to her, and there was satisfaction in turning disorder into neat columns and clear figures. She worked until mid-afternoon when exhaustion crept up on her suddenly. After banking the fire and changing back into the nightgown, Clara crawled into bed and was asleep within minutes. This pattern continued for the next week. Clara would wake, eat the breakfast Ethan brought, work on the account books for a few hours, rest, work a bit more, and then sleep through the night. Each day she felt stronger, her body recovering from the ordeal with the resilience of youth and good care. Ethan checked on her multiple times daily, always careful to knock and wait for permission before entering. He brought her meals, fresh water, and anything else she needed. Sam stopped by as well, regaling her with stories about the ranch and the territory, making her laugh with his dry humor and colorful descriptions. By the end of the second week, Clara felt almost herself again. She had gained back some of the weight she had lost. The hollow look had faded from her cheeks, and her hair, which she had washed in the basin and brushed until it shone, had regained its rich auburn color. She was working at the table one afternoon when Ethan knocked and entered with a box under his arm. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Much better. I finished organizing the ledgers from the past 2 years. Ethan, you have been losing money on feed purchases from Henderson's Supply in town. Their prices are nearly 20% higher than Miller's feed over in Boulder. If you switched suppliers, you would save almost $200 a year." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "Really? I had no idea. Also, you are underselling your beef. The going rate in Denver is 3 cents more per pound than what you are getting at the stockyard in Colorado City. It would be worth the extra drive to access that market." "How do you know the Denver prices?" Clara felt her cheeks warm. "I asked Sam to bring me newspapers from town." "I hope that was all right. I wanted to understand the market better." "Of course it is all right." Ethan set the box on the table, looking impressed. "Clara, this is exactly the kind of insight I needed. I am good with cattle and horses, but the business side has always confounded me." "It is really just a matter of paying attention to details and comparing options," Clara said, pleased by his reaction. "Any reasonably intelligent person could do it." "Maybe, but I have not met many reasonably intelligent people willing to put in the effort." He pushed the box toward her. "I went into town today, picked up some things for you." Clara opened the box and caught her breath. Inside were several packages wrapped in brown paper, along with a pair of ladies' boots and a straw bonnet with blue ribbons. "Ethan, you should not have." "Open them," he encouraged. She unwrapped the first package and found a dress of soft green cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. The second contained a practical brown wool skirt and white shirtwaist. The third held undergarments, stockings, and a nightgown far nicer than the borrowed one she had been wearing. "These are too much," Clara protested, even as her fingers lingered on the beautiful green dress. "They are necessary," Ethan corrected. "Mrs. Patterson's things have served you well, but you need your own clothes. Consider it part of your wages." "I have not earned any wages yet." "You just identified ways to save and earn hundreds of additional dollars. I would say you have more than earned a few dresses." His expression turned serious. "Clara, I want you to stay, not as a guest or out of charity, but as a real employee. I will pay you $20 a month plus room and board to manage the accounts and household. It is the same wage I pay Sam, and you would be doing work just as valuable." $20 a month was more than Clara had ever earned at the mill, even working 12-hour days. It was generous to the point of being almost unbelievable. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Ethan sat down in the chair across from her, his green eyes serious. "Honestly, at first it was because of Mary. Because I could not save her, and helping you felt like making amends for that failure. But this past 2 weeks, getting to know you, seeing how hard you work even while recovering, how smart and capable you are, that has changed." Now I am asking you to stay because I genuinely need your help and because I enjoy your company. You belong here, Clara. I have felt it since that first day. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. There was something in the way he looked at her, an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. I would like to stay, she said quietly. Very much. Good. Ethan's face broke into a smile that transformed his usually serious features. That is really good. He stood, suddenly seeming awkward. I will let you try on the clothes, make sure everything fits. If anything needs adjusting, Mrs. Cooper, the seamstress in town, can handle it. After he left, Clara tried on each piece, marveling at how well everything fit. The green dress in particular made her eyes look brighter, brought out the red in her hair. She had not owned anything so pretty since before her parents died. That evening, Ethan invited her to dinner in the main house. Clara wore the green dress, taking extra care with her hair, pinning it up in a soft style she remembered her mother favoring. When she knocked on the door, Sam answered with a low whistle. Well, do not you clean up nice, Miss Brennan? Thank you, Sam. Clara stepped inside and her eyes immediately found Ethan. He had cleaned up as well, wearing a fresh shirt and trousers, his dark hair still damp from washing. When he saw her, he went completely still. You look beautiful, he said, and the raw honesty in his voice made Clara's breath catch. Thank you. The dress is lovely. Dinner was venison stew with vegetables from the garden behind the house, fresh bread, and apple pie that Sam admitted to purchasing from a widow in town who baked for extra income. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from local politics to books they had read to Sam's outrageous stories about Ethan's early attempts at ranching. He tried to break that big roan stallion the first week we met, Sam said, his eyes twinkling. Thing bucked him off 7 times in 10 minutes. By the end, Ethan was more dirt than man. I got him gentle eventually, Ethan protested, but he was grinning. Took you 3 months, Sam countered. Most stubborn horse I have ever seen, matched only by the most stubborn man. Clara laughed, enjoying the easy affection between the two men. This was what family should feel like, she realized. Not just blood, but choice and loyalty and genuine care. As the evening wore on, Sam excused himself to check on the horses, leaving Clara and Ethan alone. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, and Ethan poured them each a small glass of whiskey. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. To new beginnings, Clara echoed, clinking her glass against his. The whiskey burned pleasantly down her throat. Ethan moved to one of the armchairs near the fire, and Clara took the other. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Can I ask you something? Ethan said finally. Of course. You think you will ever go back east, even for a visit? Clara considered the question. I do not think so. There is nothing there for me now. Philadelphia was never really home, just a place I ended up after my parents died. I think home is something you make, not something you are born into. I believe that too. Ethan's gaze was thoughtful. This ranch, it is the first place that ever really felt like mine. Not just because I own it, but because I built it with my own hands. Every fence post, every repair to the house, every calf born here, it all means something. I can understand that. In a way, that is what I am doing with the account books, taking something messy and making it into something organized and purposeful, creating order from chaos. You are good at it. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Clara, I want you to know that you are safe here. I know you have been hurt, betrayed by someone you trusted. I cannot promise I am perfect, but I can promise I will never lie to you and I will never abandon you. Whatever happens, you will always have a place here. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. That means more than I can say. They talked late into the night, sharing stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Clara learned that Ethan had once wanted to be a school teacher, that he loved poetry but was too embarrassed to admit it to most people, that he had a recurring nightmare about losing the ranch. Ethan learned that Clara had taught herself French from a discarded book she found at the mill, that she wanted to learn to ride a horse, that she had always dreamed of seeing the ocean. When Clara finally returned to her cabin in the early morning hours, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time since her parents died, she felt like she had found where she belonged. The weeks turned into months, and Clara settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She managed the accounts with increasing confidence, identifying inefficiencies and opportunities that impressed even Sam. She also took over the household management, organizing supplies, planning meals, and turning the bachelor chaos of the main house into something approaching domestic order. Ethan taught her to ride, starting with the gentlest mare in the stable, a sweet-tempered bay named Honey. Clara proved to be a natural, her initial fear giving way to exhilaration as she learned to move with the horse. Soon, she was accompanying Ethan and Sam on rides across the property, learning about the land and the cattle and the endless work that went into running a ranch. She found herself watching Ethan more than she should. The way his muscles moved beneath his shirt when he worked, the concentration on his face when he was breaking a horse, the gentleness in his hands when he handled a newborn calf. He was everything Marcus had pretended to be. Honest, hardworking, kind, and genuinely good. For his part, Ethan seemed equally unable to keep his eyes off her. Clara caught him watching her more than once, his expression unguarded and full of longing. But he never overstepped, never made her feel uncomfortable or pressured. He remained unfailingly respectful, even as the tension between them grew more obvious with each passing day. It was Sam who finally addressed the elephant in the room. Clara was helping him mend a saddle in the barn one afternoon in late July when he set down his tools and fixed her with a direct look. "You know he is in love with you, right?" Clara nearly dropped the leather strap she was holding. "What, Ethan? He is head over heels for you. Has been since about the second week you were here." Sam's weathered face was kind. "And unless I am completely blind, you feel the same way about him." "I do not know what you mean," Clara protested weakly. "Child, I may be old, but I am not stupid. I see the way you two look at each other when you think no one is watching. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Clara set down the strap, her hands trembling slightly. "Even if that were true, Ethan saved my life. He gave me a home and a job when I had nothing. It would not be right to assume he wants anything more than that. And what if he does want more? What if he is holding back for the exact same reason you are, because he does not want you to feel obligated or pressured?" Sam leaned back against the workbench. "Life is short, Clara. Too short to waste time being afraid of happiness. If you care about him, and I know you do, then tell him. The worst that happens is he says he needs more time. The best that happens is you stop dancing around each other and actually live the life you both clearly want." Clara's heart pounded. "What if he does not feel that way? What if I am reading this all wrong and I ruin everything?" "You are not reading it wrong." Sam's voice was gentle but firm. "But if you need proof, ask him. Tonight. Ethan went into town for supplies, but he will be back by supper. Make yourself pretty and tell that boy how you feel." Clara spent the rest of the afternoon in a state of nervous anticipation. She returned to her cabin and selected the green dress, the one Ethan had bought her that first time. She washed and carefully arranged her hair, pinching her cheeks for color and biting her lips to make them redder. When she saw Ethan ride in as the sun was setting, Clara's courage nearly failed her. But Sam's words echoed in her mind. "Life is short." Too short to waste time being afraid of happiness, she walked to the main house and knocked. Ethan opened the door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Clara, I was just about to bring you some supper." "Actually, I was hoping we could talk. Alone." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. "Of course, come in." The house was quiet, Sam apparently making himself scarce. Ethan gestured to the armchairs by the fire and Clara sat, her heart hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Is everything all right?" Ethan asked, concern creasing his features. "Yes, no, I do not know." Clara twisted her hands in her lap. "I need to tell you something, and I am afraid it will change everything." Ethan went very still. "Go on." Clara took a deep breath. "When you found me in that wagon, I thought my life was over. I had lost everything, been betrayed by someone I trusted, and I truly believed I was going to die alone in the desert. But then you appeared and you saved me. Not just my life, but my faith in people. My faith in goodness, Clara. Please let me finish." She met his eyes, forcing herself to be brave. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. Every morning I wake up looking forward to the day. Not just because I enjoy the work, though I do, but because I get to see you, talk to you, be near you." "Ethan, I know it is probably inappropriate, given everything you have done for me, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way. I care about you, deeply. More than I have ever cared about anyone." Ethan stared at her, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, and Clara felt her stomach sink with mortification. "I am sorry," she stammered, standing. "I should not have said anything. I will understand if you want me to leave. I can be packed by morning." "Leave." Ethan was suddenly standing too, crossing the space between them in 2 long strides. "Clara, why in God's name would I want you to leave? Because I overstepped. Because I made you uncomfortable. Because you just said everything I have been desperate to say for months, but was too afraid to speak out loud." Ethan reached out, his hands gentle as they framed her face. "Clara, I have been in love with you since the day I watched you sit up in that wagon and thank me for bread like I had given you the world. Every day since then, I have fallen deeper. The way you laugh at Sam's stories, the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating on the accounts, the way you light up when you are on horseback, the way you look right now, so beautiful it hurts to breathe." "You love me," Clara whispered, barely daring to believe it. "With everything I am," Ethan replied. "But I did not want to push you. You had been through so much, and I did not want you to feel obligated or trapped. I thought if I just waited, gave you time and space, maybe eventually you would see me as something more than the man who found you in that wagon." "I already do." Clara's hands came up to cover his, still cradling her face. "Ethan, you are everything. Everything good and right and real. I love you." The kiss, when it came, was tender and desperate all at once. Ethan's lips were warm and gentle, tasting of coffee and hope. Clara melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as his move to encircle her waist, pulling her close. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and full of all the weeks of wanting and waiting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly, take you to dances in town and church socials and let everyone know you are mine. I want to marry you, Clara. I want to build a life with you that is ours, not just mine or yours, but something we create together." "Yes," Clara breathed. "Yes to all of it." Ethan pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "You are sure? You do not need time to think about it." "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He kissed her again, and this time Clara let herself sink into the feeling, into the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally broke apart, Ethan was grinning like a fool. "I want to do this properly," he said again. which means I should probably stop kissing you before I forget myself entirely. Clara laughed, feeling giddy with happiness. I suppose that would be the respectable thing to do. Come to the dance with me next Saturday. The town puts on a social once a month in the summer. I want to walk in there with you on my arm and let every man in Colorado City know you are spoken for. I would like that very much. The week leading up to the dance passed in a blur of happiness. Ethan and Clara continued their work on the ranch, but now there was an openness between them, a joy in every interaction. He would catch her hand as they walked, pull her close for a quick kiss when Sam was not looking, whisper endearments that made her blush and smile. Sam watched them with obvious satisfaction, his weathered face creasing with smiles whenever he saw them together. "About time," was all he said, but the approval in his voice was clear. On Saturday, Clara dressed carefully in her green dress, arranging her hair with extra care. Ethan arrived at her cabin looking devastatingly handsome in a clean white shirt and black trousers, his dark hair combed neatly. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen," he said, offering his arm. The dance was held in the largest building in Colorado City, a combination meeting hall and church that served multiple purposes for the small community. Lanterns hung from the rafters, and a small band consisting of a fiddle, a guitar, and a caller provided music. The room was already crowded with ranchers, farmers, townspeople, and their families. Heads turned when Ethan walked in with Clara on his arm. She saw the curiosity, the speculation, and yes, a few envious looks from other women. But Ethan seemed oblivious to everyone but her. "Ethan Jennings, you have been holding out on us," called a big man with a bushy beard. "When were you going to introduce your lady friend?" "Everyone, this is Miss Clara Brennan," Ethan announced, pride clear in his voice. "She manages the accounts at the Broken J and has already saved me more money than I care to admit. Clara, this is everyone." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and people began introducing themselves. Clara met the Harper family who ran the neighboring ranch, the Coopers who owned the mercantile, Mrs. Wilson the schoolteacher, and dozens of others. Everyone was welcoming, clearly pleased to see Ethan happy. When the music started, Ethan led her onto the floor. Clara had not danced since before her parents died, but Ethan was patient and sure-footed, guiding her through the steps until she relaxed and let the music carry her. "You are a good dancer," she said as they twirled across the floor. "Do not tell anyone," Ethan replied with mock seriousness. "It would ruin my reputation as a rough and tough cowboy." Clara laughed, feeling happier than she had ever imagined possible. This was what life should be, she thought. Joy and laughter and being held by someone who loved you. They danced almost every dance, taking breaks only when others insisted on claiming Clara for a turn. Each time she danced with another man, Clara felt Ethan's eyes on her, watchful and possessive in a way that made her heart race. It was during a break that Clara overheard the conversation that would shatter her perfect evening. She had stepped outside for fresh air, standing near an open window to cool down when she heard two women talking inside. "Did you see the way he looks at her? Absolutely besotted. I heard she was some woman he found abandoned on the road, took her in out of charity." "Charity? Is that what they are calling it now?" The woman's voice dripped with insinuation. "Ethan Jennings is a good man, but he is still a man. Pretty young thing like that, grateful and dependent. I am sure she is very appreciative." "Mary Louise, what a terrible thing to say. I am just being practical. A man does not take in a strange woman and give her a home unless he is getting something out of it, and I doubt it is help with his account books." Clara felt as though she had been slapped. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against the wall, trying to steady herself. Was that what people thought? that she was repaying Ethan's kindness with her body, that their love was nothing more than a sordid transaction. She found Ethan inside and told him she needed to leave. He took one look at her pale face and agreed immediately, not asking questions until they were in the wagon heading back to the ranch. "What happened?" he asked gently. "You looked like you were having a wonderful time, and then suddenly you wanted to leave." Clara told him what she had overheard, her voice shaking with hurt and anger. Ethan's expression darkened. "Gossiping biddies who have nothing better to do than make up nasty stories," he said flatly. "Clara, do not let them ruin this. We know the truth. That is all that matters." "But what if they are right?" Clara burst out. "Not about us being together in that way, but about the rest. Ethan, I was desperate and dependent, and you offered me everything. What if I only think I love you because I am grateful? What if I am confusing gratitude with actual feeling?" Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to face her fully. "Do you really believe that?" Clara thought about it, really thought, examining her feelings with brutal honesty. She thought about the way her heart lifted every time she saw Ethan, the way she wanted to share every thought, every moment with him, the way his smile could make her entire day better, the way his kiss had felt like coming home. "No," she said softly. "No, I do not believe that. I love you, Ethan. Not because you saved me or gave me a home, but because of who you are. Then that is all that matters." Ethan reached out, taking her hand. "Clara, people will always talk. That is the nature of small towns, but we cannot live our lives worried about gossip. All we can do is be honest with each other and ourselves." "You are right." Clara squeezed his hand. "I am sorry. I let them get into my head. Nothing to apologize for." Ethan urged the horses forward again. "But for what it is worth, I plan on making you my wife as soon as you will agree to it. Then those gossips can say whatever they like, and it will not matter because you will be Mrs. Ethan Jennings." Clara felt her heart swell. "Is that a proposal?" "Not yet. When I propose, it will be proper with a ring and everything." He glanced at her, his expression tender. "But soon, if you are willing." "I am willing," Clara said softly. True to his word, Ethan proposed 2 weeks later. He took her on a ride to the high meadow on the ranch, a place where wildflowers grew in riotous profusion, and the view stretched for miles. As they stood looking out over the valley with the mountains purple in the distance, Ethan took both her hands. "Clara Brennan, you came into my life when I was not looking for anyone. You appeared like a miracle in that wagon, and you have been a miracle every day since. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. You have taken my rough bachelor life and turned it into a home. You challenge me and support me and make me want to be better than I am." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "I know it is not fancy, but I hope you will wear it. Will you marry me?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Ethan slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, deep and tender, and Clara felt her whole world shift into place. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not wealth or adventure, but home. Love. Belonging. They married in late September, with Sam standing as Ethan's best man and Mrs. Harper from the neighboring ranch serving as Clara's matron of honor. The ceremony took place in the same hall where they had danced, packed with well-wishers from town and the surrounding ranches. Even Mary Louise, the woman whose gossip had hurt Clara so badly, came and offered congratulations that seemed genuine. Clara wore a new dress of ivory silk that Mrs. Cooper had helped her select, with her hair arranged in an elaborate style that had taken hours to create. Ethan wore a new suit, looking so handsome that Clara's breath caught when she saw him waiting at the altar. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Ethan kissed her, Clara felt tears stream down her cheeks. These were happy tears, joy tears, tears of gratitude for the twisting path that had led her to this moment. The reception was lively, with dancing and food and toasts that made them both laugh and cry. Sam gave a speech about how he had watched Ethan grow from a green kid into a man he was proud to call friend, and how Clara had brought light into their lives that they had not even known was missing. As the evening wound down and the guests began to depart, Ethan swept Clara into his arms and carried her to the wagon amid cheers and laughter. They rode back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, Clara nestled against her husband's side. The main house had been transformed. Sam had moved all of Clara's belongings from the cabin into what was now their bedroom, the space that had been Ethan's alone. Fresh flowers stood in a vase on the dresser, and the bed was turned down invitingly. Ethan carried her over the threshold, setting her gently on her feet. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the reality of being married suddenly very real. "I love you," Clara whispered. "I love you too," Ethan replied. "More than words can say." He kissed her gently, and Clara melted into him, her husband, her home. What followed was tender and sweet, Ethan taking his time, making sure Clara felt cherished and loved. They learned each other in the lamplight, mapping skin and breath and pleasure until they were both trembling and complete. Afterward, Clara lay in Ethan's arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I cannot believe how much my life has changed," she said softly. 6 months ago, I was dying in a wagon, convinced I would never be happy again. Now I am married to the most wonderful man I have ever known." "Funny how fate works," Ethan replied, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "If I had taken the southern route into town that day, I would have missed you entirely. Some other traveler might have found you, or no one." "I do not want to think about that." Clara shivered despite the warmth of his arms. "Neither do I." Ethan pulled her closer. "I believe things happen for a reason, Clara. I believe you were meant to end up on that road so I could find you, so we could find each other. I believe that too." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Clara woke in the morning to find Ethan watching her with soft eyes, she felt a surge of such intense happiness it was almost painful. Life settled into a new rhythm. Clara continued managing the accounts and household, but now she did so as mistress of the house rather than employee. She and Ethan worked side by side, building the ranch and their life together with careful intention. In November, Clara realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first she was not certain, but when a second month passed with no sign of them and morning sickness began, she knew. She was pregnant. She told Ethan one evening after supper, watching his face carefully for his reaction. For a moment, he simply stared at her, processing the information. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby in late June, if I am calculating correctly." Ethan swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop before she got dizzy. "This is the best news," he said, setting her down carefully as though she might break. "Clara, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear him say it. "Happy? I am over the moon, terrified but over the moon." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child, part you and part me." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Clara experienced the expected discomforts, morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, exhaustion that left her napping at odd hours, and later, backaches and swollen ankles. But through it all, Ethan was attentive and supportive, taking on extra work so she could rest and making sure she had everything she needed. Sam was equally delighted, already planning what he would teach the child and speculating endlessly about whether it would be a boy or girl. A boy would be nice, someone to help with the ranch, he mused one afternoon. A girl would be wonderful too, Clara countered, smart and strong like her father. In the end, their firstborn arrived on a sweltering June afternoon after 12 hours of labor that left Clara exhausted but exhilarated. Dr. Matthews from town had come out to assist, and when he finally placed the squalling infant in her arms, Clara felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "A boy," the doctor announced. "Healthy and strong, good lungs on him." Ethan, who had stayed by her side through the entire ordeal despite the doctor's suggestion that he wait outside, looked down at his son with tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. They named him Samuel Ethan Jennings, after the man who had been like a father to Ethan. Sam himself cried when they told him, gruffly claiming it was just dust in his eyes, but fooling no one. Baby Samuel was indeed perfect, with his father's green eyes and his mother's auburn hair. He was a content baby, crying only when hungry or uncomfortable, and sleeping well almost from the start. Clara marveled at the tiny miracle they had created, at the way Ethan was so gentle with his son, holding him like precious glass. Life on the ranch continued to flourish. Clara's careful management had indeed increased their profits significantly, and Ethan used the additional income to buy more land and expand the herd. By Samuel's first birthday, the Broken Jay was one of the most prosperous ranches in the region. They celebrated that first birthday with a party that brought together all their friends and neighbors. Samuel, delighted by the attention, laughed and clapped and demolished a small cake that Clara had baked specially for him. "You look happy, Mrs. Harper observed, watching Clara clean cake from her son's face. "I am," Clara replied simply, "happier than I ever dreamed possible. You have built a good life here, both of you." Clara looked across the yard to where Ethan was talking with Sam and several other ranchers, Samuel perched on his hip. Her husband caught her eye and winked, and Clara felt her heart swell with love. "We have," she agreed, "and it just keeps getting better." 2 years later, Clara gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Mary Ruth Jennings, after Ethan's sister and Clara's mother. Mary had Clara's auburn hair but Ethan's serious expression, even as an infant. She was more particular than Samuel had been, preferring her mother's arms to anyone else's and protesting loudly when her preferences were ignored. Samuel, now a sturdy 3-year-old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit beside her cradle for hours, talking to her in his serious little voice, showing her his toys and telling her about the ranch. "I am going to teach you to ride," he informed her one day. "And we can go see the cows together." Clara, watching from the doorway, felt tears prick her eyes. This was what family was supposed to be. Love and protection and the fierce certainty that you would do anything for these people. As the children grew, so did the ranch. Ethan took on 2 more permanent hands to help with the expanding operations, and Clara hired a girl from town to help with the housework and the children. The Broken Jay became known throughout the region for quality cattle and fair dealing. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Clara with a trip to Denver. Sam agreed to watch the children, and Clara and Ethan spent 3 glorious days in the city, staying in a real hotel with indoor plumbing and electric lights, eating in restaurants, and attending a theatrical performance that left Clara speechless with wonder. "Thank you," she said on their last night as they lay in the hotel bed, "for all of this, for everything." "Thank you," Ethan countered, "for saying yes to staying that first day, for taking a chance on a rough cowboy who did not know what he was doing." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Clara replied. "You saved my life and then you made it worth living." They made love slowly that night, taking their time to enjoy each other without worrying about children waking or ranch responsibilities calling. Afterward, they talked late into the night about their dreams for the future, plans for expanding the ranch further, hopes for their children's futures. "I want them to have choices," Clara said. "Samuel should run the ranch if he wants to, but he should also know he could do something else if he preferred. And Mary should have the same opportunities as her brother." "Agreed," Ethan said. "We will make sure they are educated and supported, whatever they choose." Life continued its steady march forward. Samuel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and the animals with a passion that rivaled his father's. Mary was more adventurous, always exploring and asking questions, keeping her parents on their toes. When Samuel was 7 and Mary was 4, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was more difficult than the previous two, with severe morning sickness and exhaustion that lasted through all 9 months. Ethan worried constantly, hovering over her and insisting she rest. "I am fine," Clara assured him repeatedly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "But none of those women were my wife carrying my child," Ethan countered. Their third child, another boy they named Thomas Henry Jennings, arrived 2 weeks early in the middle of a spring snowstorm. Dr. Matthews barely made it to the ranch in time, arriving just an hour before Thomas's dramatic entrance into the world. "This one could not wait," the doctor said with a laugh, cleaning the squalling infant. "Impatient like his father." Thomas proved to be a handful from the start. He was colicky and difficult, crying more than his siblings combined. Clara spent many nights walking the floor with him, exhausted and frustrated, until Ethan would take over and insist she sleep. "He will grow out of it," Ethan promised during one particularly difficult night. "Samuel was so easy we forgot that babies are usually hard work." Ethan was right. By 6 months, Thomas settled down and revealed himself to be a sweet-natured, curious baby who smiled readily and laughed at everything. The whole household fell in love with him, and even Samuel, who had been somewhat jealous of the new baby, became fiercely protective of his little brother. The years passed in a blur of work and love, and the small daily joys of family life. Samuel grew tall and strong, working alongside his father from a young age. Mary proved to be brilliant, devouring every book she could get her hands on and constantly pestering her mother to teach her more. Thomas was the adventurous one, always getting into mischief and giving his parents gray hair with his dangerous exploits. When Samuel was 16, a young man with his father's build and his mother's coloring, he told his parents he wanted to go to agricultural college in Boulder. Clara's heart broke a little at the thought of him leaving, but she supported his decision. "Education is important," she told Ethan when he seemed uncertain. "He can always come back to the ranch, but he should have the chance to learn and grow." Samuel did indeed go to college, returning home during summers to work on the ranch and share everything he was learning about new breeding techniques and water conservation methods. He brought his education to bear on the Broken Jay, helping to modernize their operations and increase efficiency. Mary announced at 15 that she wanted to be a teacher. "Like Mrs. Wilson," she explained, "but I want to teach in the cities, help children who do not have the advantages we have had." Clara supported her daughter's dream, even as she worried about Mary being so far from home. But she and Ethan had promised their children could choose their own paths, and they intended to keep that promise. Thomas, true to form, was the one who wanted to stay on the ranch. At 12, he was already declaring he would take over when his father was ready to retire, that he would expand it even further and make the Broken Jay the most successful ranch in Colorado. "Ambitious," Sam observed with a smile. He was well into his 70s now, moving slower but still sharp as ever. Reminds me of another young man I knew once, determined to make something of himself against all odds. On Clara and Ethan's 20th wedding anniversary, their children surprised them with a party. Samuel came home from college, bringing with him a young woman named Alice whom he had been courting. Mary arrived from her teaching position in Colorado Springs. Thomas, of course, was already there, having spent the day helping his father with ranch work. The house was packed with friends and neighbors, people who had watched Clara and Ethan build their life together, who had celebrated their joys and supported them through challenges. Toasts were made, stories told, and laughter filled every corner of the house. Late in the evening, after the guests had gone home and the children had gone to bed, Clara and Ethan walked out onto the porch. The night was clear and cool, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. 20 years, Clara said softly, leaning against Ethan's side. It seems like yesterday and forever ago all at once. I know what you mean. Ethan wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Sometimes I still see that frightened woman in the wagon, and I cannot believe how much has changed. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had taken a different road that day? Never, Ethan said firmly. I do not believe in what-ifs. I believe in what is. And what is that I found you and you said yes to staying and we built this life together. That is more than enough. Clara turned to look up at him, studying the face she knew as well as her own. There was silver in his dark hair now, and lines around his eyes had deepened, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. I love you, she said, more now than even that first day I realized it. I love you too. Ethan kissed her, slow and sweet. Always have, always will. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, looking out over the ranch they had built together. The land stretched before them, rich and productive, a legacy they would pass to their children. But more than the land or the cattle or the house, their real legacy was the love they had created. Love born from desperation and kindness, nurtured through choice and commitment, grown into something unshakable and true. Sam passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 years later, at the age of 79. The whole territory mourned him, this man who had been friend and mentor to so many. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple marker that read, Samuel Sam Crawford, beloved friend and father figure. Ethan grieved deeply for the man who had been more parent to him than his own father ever was. Clara held him through the dark nights, reminded him of all the good years they had shared, helped him process the loss. He had a good life, she said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. He saw you build this ranch from nothing. He knew your children and loved them. He died knowing he was valued and appreciated. Not everyone can say that. I know. Ethan took her hand. I just miss him. I do too. Clara squeezed his fingers. But he is not really gone. He is in every fence post on this ranch, every skill you use, every value you hold. He is part of our family forever. Time continued its relentless march. Samuel married his Alice and took over the majority of ranch operations, bringing fresh ideas and energy while Ethan gradually stepped back to an advisory role. Mary became a renowned educator in Denver, pioneering new teaching methods for immigrant children. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from Boulder, and they settled on an adjacent property, expanding the Jennings family holdings. Clara and Ethan became grandparents 7 times over, their house frequently filled with visiting children who wanted to hear stories about the old days and learn about ranch life from their grandfather. On Clara's 50th birthday, Ethan surprised her with a trip to California. They traveled by train, a luxury compared to the wagon journey Clara had started so many years before. They saw the ocean, that dream Clara had confessed on one of their first nights together, and she cried at the beauty of it, the endless blue stretching to the horizon. "Thank you," she said, standing in the surf with Ethan's arms around her, "for remembering, for making my dreams come true." "Every single one I can," Ethan promised, "for as long as I have breath in my body." They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by their children and grandchildren, a boisterous gathering that filled the ranch house to bursting. Clara looked around at the family they had created, all these beautiful souls that existed because a cowboy had shared his bread with a desperate woman and asked her to stay, and she felt such overwhelming gratitude it stole her breath. That night, lying in bed with Ethan, she said, "I think about that wagon sometimes, how close I came to dying there, how different everything would be if you had not found me." "But I did find you," Ethan replied, "and you stayed, and look what we made." "We made something beautiful," Clara agreed, "something lasting." As they grew older, Clara and Ethan settled into the peaceful rhythm of their later years. They took daily walks around the property, visited with their children and grandchildren, and spent long evenings on the porch reminiscing about their life together. "You have any regrets?" Clara asked one evening. Ethan considered the question seriously. "None about us, about our life together. Maybe I wish I had been a better son to my mother before she died, or that I had found Mary in time to save her. But those are old griefs, and they do not haunt me like they used to." "You healed those wounds, Clara. You healed mine too," she said softly. "You taught me to trust again, to believe in goodness." "We healed each other," Ethan said. "That is what love does." They lived to see their children settled and successful, their grandchildren growing into fine young people. The Broken J remained prosperous under Samuel's management, a testament to the foundation Ethan and Clara had built together. On a clear autumn evening in 1921, 45 years after that fateful day when Ethan found Clara in an abandoned wagon, they sat together on the porch as the sun set over the mountains. Ethan had slowed considerably, his movements careful and deliberate, but his mind was still sharp. Clara's auburn hair had gone silver, and her body was not what it once was, but her eyes still sparkled with the same intelligence and warmth that had captivated Ethan from the beginning. "Tell me again," Clara said, as she had asked countless times over the years, "about that day you found me." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "I was heading into town for supplies, taking the northern route because I wanted to check on a section of fence. I almost missed the wagon entirely. It was pulled off the road, canvas covering torn and flapping in the wind. Something made me stop and look inside. And there you were, half dead and desperate, beautiful and brave," Ethan corrected. "Even weak with hunger and thirst, you thanked me for the bread like it was the finest meal ever served. I knew right then you were special. And you said those magic words, 'Stay with me.'" "Best decision I ever made," Ethan said. "Asking you to stay. Because you did stay, and you turned my house into a home. You gave me children and grandchildren and 45 years of happiness I never thought I would have." "We built a good life," Clara said, looking out over the ranch that had been their home for so long. "The best life," Ethan agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars began to appear. Inside the house, they could hear their family. Samuel and Alice had come for dinner with 2 of their grandchildren. The house was filled with laughter and love, exactly as it should be. "I love you," Clara said softly, "from that first day until my last breath." "I love you too," Ethan replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "Forever and always, Clara." They remained on the porch until the chill drove them inside, where their family waited with warm embraces, and the kind of joy that comes from knowing you are exactly where you belong. As Clara looked around at the life they had created, she sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For the cowboy who shared his bread, for the courage to stay, for every moment of love and laughter and sometimes tears that had filled the years between then and now. She had started that journey west believing she was seeking a new life. She had found so much more. She had found her home, her love, her everything. And it had all begun with a simple act of kindness and an invitation that had changed both their lives forever. "Stay with me," he had said. And she had stayed, through joy and sorrow, through triumph and challenge, through all the years that made up a life fully lived and deeply loved. She had stayed, and it had made all the difference.